Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to the big show. DNC Day 3 wraps up. Tonight is the big finale. I mean, if you're into such things. What do you think about it thus far? Are you watching any of it? Now, even if you're not watching it, I bet you've seen some nice little highlights and clips and some coverage in your social media feed and talking to friends and on Facebook and whatnot. If you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. You know, most of the time in the existence of the James Show, I try to not be so political, but dude, we're like 75 days, I think, from the election. So pardon me if we talk a lot of politics over the next 2 months. I would like to also point out that for the handful of grumpy people that complained when I was talking about sports too much, when both the Stars and the Mavericks were in the Western Conference Finals, and I told you, look, this is just like a once-in-a-lifetime best year in Dallas sports history. I haven't said anything about it since. I hadn't even said anything about Cowboys preseason, and I'm not going to, because this is way more important. You know why? Because I just paid $16 for lunch at Jimmy John's. That is not a joke. It's not an exaggeration. I didn't get like 8 desserts. I didn't get like the super 16-inch long one. Just a regular sandwich, chips, large drink, $16. Tommy Pickett with the RNC is joining us on the James Show again. Tommy, I didn't hear anything at the conference thus far, the convention thus far, that would address the $16 lunch I just paid for fast food.
Yeah, the only thing that they're proposing in regards to that is to basically take the sandwich away in terms of causing shortages with their price control, communist-inspired scheme that even the liberal Washington Post is calling a communist-inspired scheme. I mean, we were tracking the mentions of the different speeches, and last night the word inflation was only mentioned 3 times. Just 3 times the entire night. That's not just Tim Walz's speech. That's not just one person's speech. That's the entire night, just 3 times. And that shows you their priorities are not about lowering costs. And if you look at their policies, they'd only actually increase costs and lead to shortages at the same time. But you think you could barely invent such a terrible policy, and yet that's the policy they're putting forward.
Well, I like the idea of counting some of these words. I went back to Obama's speech, and I searched the word constitution. So constitution, constitutional, constitutionality, any of those words would have popped up on it. You know how many times it was mentioned? 0. 0.0 times. And when we're talking about the person who is going to be tasked with running a government that is based on the Constitution, shouldn't it at least get a mention?
Yeah, I mean, you'd think so. I mean, the thing is that Democrats claim to be the party of democracy. That's what they call themselves, and they show themselves to be anything but time and time and time again, whether that's through targeting President Trump through weaponized institutions, whether that's trying to kick him off the ballot, whether that's literally deposing their own nominee, throwing out 14 million primary votes, and then installing their own nominee with 5 people in the back room deciding who that's going to be. You know, that's the Democrat Party for you. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to their anti-democratic tendencies. So when they claim to be the party of democracy, they're anything but. And they've shown through this last administration that they're willing to weaponize these institutions and also not listen to the Supreme Court. There are so many examples of policies that have been struck down that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have tried to put forward, and yet they try to violate the Supreme Court, find some sort of loophole, violate the spirit of the law.
Like student loan relief?
Anyway.
Like paying off your student loans?
Yeah, exactly. It comes to the border, too. I mean, when it comes to the border, there's parts in the law that dictate that they have to follow certain parts of the law. It's been ruled that they need to follow certain parts of the law, and they're trying to find any way out of it, try to invent new classifications to try to avoid securing the border. So many examples of that where the Biden administration, the Kamala Harris Biden administration, has really tried to circumvent the law any chance they can.
Well, I did a search of Tim Walz's speech while you were talking there. How many times did he say the word Constitution? You want to throw out a guess?
I'm going to guess 0 as well.
Yes, Tommy, you got it. I guess it wasn't that hard. Let's go ahead and put a bet down. Do you think Kamala Harris is going to say the word Constitution, constitutional, any variety of that base word Constitution tonight?
Well, I mean, I expect her to give the exact same speech she's been giving on the stump, and if that's the case, then I would say no, she doesn't mention it at all, because on the stump, she's basically just giving the same old speech and it doesn't mention it.
Hey, voters, if they're not mentioning the Constitution, if the Constitution is an impediment to the people that are asking for your vote, you shouldn't be voting for them. How about that? Is that a good rule of thumb?
Yeah, I mean, it's basic common sense, and at a certain point here, they're showing through even beyond what they're talking about through their actions, like you just were discussing, about how they don't follow the law. And so at a certain point, you can just look to their actions as well and say they're circumventing the law, they're not following the law, they're not obeying subpoenas. I mean, there's so many examples of them not following the law based off of their policies and their actions.
Well, and then they also kind of avoid some of the stuff that you see them trumpet the other 364 days a year, but it wasn't in the speech last night. There was no mention of the word trans kids, transitioning, trans surgeries, trans treatments, none of that.
Well, I mean, it shows just how unpopular those opinions are. The fact that Tim Walz wants to take children away from their parents if parents don't agree with these reassignment surgeries. I mean, that is so out there. It is so undermining the parents. It's almost indescribable how radical that policy is, what that could actually mean when you actually think about the government coming in and taking away a child aged as young as 8 to 12 and taking them away from their parents because their parents want to think carefully through this issue. I mean, it's outrageous. And it's a level of government control we've never seen before. So I'm not surprised they're not talking about it because it's so wildly unpopular. Yet when you look at the legislation and the actions they've taken, they have really radical opinions on this.
Well, Tommy, I think that's one of the things that we need to remember that we all learned during the coronavirus pandemic. There was the poll that said 29% of Democrat voters would support temporarily removing parents' custody of their children if the parents refuse to give them the COVID-19 vaccine.
Absolutely outrageous. I mean, and I think you're so right to bring up the COVID example because it's important to look how people respond in times of crises and how they might respond again. And President Trump responded with an impetus towards freedom, towards trusting the American people. We have Tim Walz, who refuses to say he made any mistakes when it comes to shutting down schools. He still thinks he did the correct thing in shutting down schools in Minnesota. You have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who have pushed further mandates, who have wanted to kick service members and did out of the military who didn't take the vaccine, want more mandates. I mean, they have the exact wrong approach when it comes to this. And that's a stark reminder of how they approach these different crises. And the Democrat impetus here is to seize as much power as possible, to undermine the American people as possible, and to control the American people as much as possible. And President Trump's impetus is the opposite. He wants to empower the American people to make their own decisions.
Well, Tommy, I appreciate you watching some of that DNC last night and sharing your insights with us. Thanks for being on the James Show again.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Tommy Pigott, RNC spokesman. Your thoughts on the Democrat National Convention happening this week? Did you watch any of it last night? What do you think of some of the clips you saw online? There's also some audio that you're going to hear in about 5 minutes that I would like to get your opinion on as well. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, I know I sound a little stuffy. I'm not sick. My nose is stopped up. It's allergies or something. I think I might have monkeypox. It's it's the cool thing right now. All the cool kids are getting monkeypox. I don't know how you get it. I think it's from toilet seats or something. But day 3 of the DNC concluded last night. We have one more day left tonight. The big speaker tonight, the headliner, of course, Kamala Harris, the now official candidate for the Democrat Party. Also, who's the other ones? Gretchen Whitmer and I think, was it Shapiro? It was some other swing state guy. Was it Shapiro? Yeah, so 2 swing state governors are going to be leading her. Smart, strategically speaking. We'll get to some of the highlights here, but if you want to jump in, just feel free to call anytime. I'd like to hear any thoughts that you had. Because I imagine, look, if you didn't watch it, someone watched it out there, and I would like to hear your thoughts. I know what I think, but your brain works different than mine. So 800-288-9227. We'll start with Kevin in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP. What do you think about the DNC, sir?
Just for a moment. Can you hear me?
I can.
I just want to put out there that Bill Clinton had no right to be up there talking bad about Donald Trump, President Trump. He was actually impeached for lying and also lied under oath to a federal grand jury. How dare he be up there at all talking anything bad about President Trump?
Well, that's I hope I don't get in trouble with some of my listeners here, but I think the impeachment against Bill Clinton ultimately was a mistake. It worked in the fact that you stained him and it ruined Al Gore and you ended up winning the next election. It made the Democrats look bad and embarrassed. But, I try to use the example like of our founding fathers. A couple of them had some sexual indiscretions and weren't really enthused about the whole marriage fidelity thing. Ben Franklin among them, and exploiting that and trying to run him out of office in public opinion over his sexual peccadillos would have been a mistake. Not to say that Bill Clinton is anywhere near Ben Franklin, but I generally sour on going after people for moral shortcomings like that. However, now that I say that, let me come back the other way even harder. I'm not really concerned about the voluntary favors he got from Monica Lewinsky under the desk on Easter Sunday. That's bad. That's not what you want in a president. I'm more concerned about the 23 women who have accused him of rape and or sexual assault. And I'm not talking about the consensual affairs. I'm not talking about Jennifer Flowers and other people that he's been with and it was voluntary. I'm talking about there's 23 people. I've had to go back and count them all. And we know the names of more than half of them. There's a few anonymous ones, like when he was the Attorney General of Arkansas and Governor of Arkansas. There's two different reports. One say 6, one say 7 times the Arkansas State Police had to cover up for one of his sexual assaults. But other than that, we know most of the women that he sexually assaulted, the Kathleen Willies, the Paula Jones, the Juanita Brodericks. I think if that's not a disqualifying factor, then I don't want to hear anything about anyone's immorality going forward.
I got you. He just lied to a federal grand jury, is my point. And if any of us said it, we'd still be in prison.
No, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. I'm just saying it doesn't bother me because one of the fingers I point at the Republican Party when they gripe about how Donald Trump was just so flippantly impeached twice for light and transient causes. You guys started this. You guys were the first ones to do the light and transient cause impeachment. Yeah, he lied under oath. About a BJ, though? I mean, does that really hang anything in America in the balance? That whole trial was, I think it was the Whitewater scandal, right? So, what we got here? Oh my goodness. Breaking news. Can we just go to this? In Cochise County, Arizona, the sheriff is doing a press conference, and in Arizona, they are searching for a man threatening to kill Trump. Am I getting this right? There's a manhunt underway right now? All right. I'll check this out on the break and let you know what's going on with that. That's wild. Because look, I am not a conspiracy theorist, but some of these things that are called conspiracy theories are not. And I saw Alex Jones saying, what was that this morning? He was saying that they're going to try and assassinate Trump. They'll probably try and frame Iran, start World War III, yada, yada, yada. Now, Alex Jones is wrong quite often. Ask the families of Sandy Hook. But he's been right. And he's been right a few times where I thought he was wrong. And that absolutely makes sense. You can't say that, well, that's ridiculous. They wouldn't try to assassinate him. They just did it a month ago. And you think, what's the more plausible scenario? Some 20-year-old can outsmart our Secret Service. Some guy with no training, with no resources, with no network, with no help, with not even a partner can get through that. I don't know. I'll check on that and get back to you and let you know what's going on with this Arizona situation. But I have so much stuff lined up for the for the DNC. First, let me start out with how bizarre is it when I can play you a soundbite and you're going to have a hard time telling me if it's real or if it's a parody. Let me start with this one. This is Bill Clinton on the stage last night, or is it?
And sure, I went to Jeffrey Epstein Island 27 times. It was fun as hell. The time of my life, but then Hillary killed him and I couldn't go anymore. So now I'm stuck with this, you know.
All right. I don't know if that's an impersonator or probably AI. Okay, so that was the fake Bill Clinton. Here's the real Bill Clinton last night on stage at the DNC talking about Tim Walz.
And then he became a great governor. And by all accounts, he was a crack shot who had the courage among his rural constituents to say, we do not need these assault weapons available to people who can kill our kids in school.
The Bill of Rights isn't just an enumeration of rights you're supposed to have. It's also a checklist for like a warning sign for tyrants. And if someone is wanting to suppress free speech and assembly and religion, like they did during the COVID lockdowns, and that's all the First Amendment. They also want to restrict the press, First Amendment. Now they want to restrict guns, Second Amendment. What are they doing? Are they just following the Founding Fathers' blueprint for tyranny? All right, let's go to Trump. Just stepped up to the podium in Arizona. We're going to go to him live and see what this is all about, because the caption at the bottom says, Arizona search for man threatening to kill Trump. We're going to go to this live.
Sad time for this country in many ways. You had a candidate. I was no fan of Joe Biden, but the way he was taken out was a coup. He got 14 million votes, and the person running now got none. She was disgraced. She was figured out by the Democrat voters. She never made it to Iowa. She was the first one out of approximately 22 people that were running for the Democrat nomination. She never even
all right, that's not telling us anything.
Made it to Iowa.
Let's kill this. On Fox News, they have Arizona officials searching for a man believed to have made threats against Trump. Manhunt's underway in Arizona for a suspect. He has outstanding warrants in Wisconsin and Arizona. Well, that's not a good sign. More details coming up on this. I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe Eric has something in the news, but I'll go read and try and get caught up on this. And I'll also I'll make Garrett listen to Trump if he says anything of consequence. You'll hear it coming up in about 6-7 minutes, and more DNC highlights. If you want to jump in, I'd love to hear from you. 800-288-9227. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. All right, of all the things that are being talked about on the campaign trail, the one that affects you most is economic issues, and that's every election cycle, unless we're in World War II or something like that. Look, this is what causes empires, countries, civilizations to rise and fall. They're a stewardship of the economy. The Roman Empire didn't collapse because trannies didn't get to choose their bathroom. The Ottoman Empire didn't collapse because they couldn't have abortions up to the 9th month. It's always been the economy. It's the most important thing we do in D.C., and I believe it deserves a little more attention. One of the reasons is for lunch, I went to Jimmy John's, got a regular combo. I made the god-awful mistake of adding cheese, because now a slice of cheese is $1.29. $16. $16 is what I paid for lunch, and I didn't go get a steak. I got Jimmy John's. I got a salad wrap. Jesus. All right, Stephen Moore is my next guest. This is a guy I need to talk to. If you don't recognize the name, he's one of the great economic minds of the last 30 years, a Trump advisor, and partially wrote the tax cuts that you got in 2017 that are set to expire at the end of next year already. Stephen Moore, welcome back to the James Show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And by the way, this literally just came across 30 minutes ago. Have you seen the news report about the Kamala Harris tax plan that she just released?
I did not. No, not in the last 30 minutes.
This is a big deal. I want people to pay close attention. This is a really big deal. These people are completely out of their minds. They're proposing a $5 trillion increase, not $5 billion, $5 trillion tax increase. And I'm going to, if I may, can I just read you some of the insane ideas that they're talking about?
That's why you're here, please.
I don't know if these people are intentionally trying to destroy our country, but if they have a plan to try to do that, this would be a good way to do it. So I'm just going to read you some of this stuff, because you're not even going to believe this, but it's been reported by the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And so here are the numbers. Okay, pulling these up right now. Okay, here it is. She wants to, ready this? Okay. She wants to raise the corporate tax rate on our American businesses from 21% to 28%. That's like putting a tariff on our own goods and services. How stupid is that? We're going to put every American business at a competitive disadvantage in competing against China and Japan and Mexico and other countries. So that's a crazy policy. And by the way, it reverses the successful Trump tax cut we put in place back in 2017, which I was very proud to have a hand in.
Look, I know you're only going to make me madder with this.
So stock buybacks from 1% to 4%, which will mean that you raise the tax on stocks and the value of stocks go down. So anybody who has a 401k plan would see a reduction in the value of their pension plan. Here's another one. They want to put in place double a global minimum tax from 10% to 20%. Why should we have any global minimum tax?
What is a global minimum tax?
Tax system. All right, I'm not done yet. They want to raise the top income tax rate from 37% to 40%. Boy, that'll do a lot of good for America. They want to raise the corporate minimum tax from 15 to 21%. They want to, now this is insanity. They want to raise the capital gains tax. That's a tax you get when you make a gain on owning a stock or owning a farm or a ranch. They want to double that tax from 24 to 43.5%. And then, most diabolical of all, they want to impose, for the first time in American history, a 25% tax on an unrealized capital gain. So do you know what that means, an unrealized capital gain?
Yeah, so if I have like a rental property that's worth $400,000 and next year it's worth $500,000, I'm going to get taxed on that $100,000 gain, even though I didn't sell the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? I mean, so let's take you're there in Texas. Let's say you own a ranch, and let's say you bought the ranch for $500,000, and then 20 years later, let's say the ranch is worth $4 million. Now you've got a ranch that's worth $5 million, but you haven't sold it. You've just got its value on paper has gone up. They would charge you 25% tax on $4.5 million. Where's the rancher going to get the money to pay the tax? They would literally. I mean, I shouldn't be laughing because this is just craziness. They would literally force people to sell a farm or sell a ranch just to pay the taxes.
So you would have a whole bunch of ranches go on the market. The bottom would fall out of the real estate market. Oh, this is okay.
Yes. I mean,
why are we act surprised?
Those the rich stuff. It's all sack it to the rich because they're the dangerous ones. Like the people who are in the top 1% that they want to tax here are the people who create businesses and own the businesses. Now, I know that Kamala Harris doesn't understand this because she's never worked for a business. She's never started a business. She's never made a profit in her life. But if you it's going to make it really simple. If without businesses, without profits, you don't have businesses. Without businesses, you don't have jobs. Without jobs, the whole economy is destroyed.
Stephen Moore, I'm not too surprised about any of this considering who her father is.
I guess. I mean, this, ladies and gentlemen, and it's hot off the presses, would be the largest tax increase in the history of the civilized world.
Well, if you needed a reason to vote for Team Red, that's probably the top one is this tax plan. Man, I'm going to have to look some of this up.
I wonder if any of your listeners believe that the way to prosperity is to massively raise taxes.
They've just whittled the hatred for half of this country of successful people into where they think this is justified.
And they don't understand that, even those of us who aren't rich, and I'm not rich, I do pretty well, but I'm not rich. I'm not a millionaire. But everybody aspires to get rich. That's the American dream, to get rich. And folks, what I'm saying is, if you do get rich, if your boat comes in, you start a business and you make the money, they're going to tax it away from you. That
unrealized capital gains tax, is that something that clocks every year?
So every time that the property would appreciate, well, first of all, it would start on day one. So all the appreciation of any property that you bought, maybe even going back to the 1980s, you'd have to pay this enormous tax bill in the first year. Then any time after that, if the thing appreciates in value, you pay a tax. Now here, think about what a trick this is. What about if you lose money on the ranch? Do you think they're going to give you your money back?
Yeah, you'll get a write-off or something, but we're also doing this in an environment where we're printing $2 trillion a year. So when you're guaranteeing us, 3 to 9% inflation every year, the property value is not actually going up with the nominal value, but you're going to be taxed on that anyway.
Very good point. So, one of the reasons we have a preferential tax treatment for capital gains is because we don't take account of the inflation. So that, let's say that ranch that I was talking about in an earlier example, maybe you bought it for $500,000. Now it's worth, say, $4 million, but you bought it 30 years ago. Adjusted for inflation, you didn't even really make that much money on it. And yet they're going to tax you on the inflated value of I mean, these people are diabolical, really, when you think about it.
All right, Stephen Moore, thank you very much for the economic update there. I'll go look up more on this tax plan, and we all learned something in this segment, that's for sure.
I didn't ruin your afternoon there.
It was already ruined. I mean, lunch was good, but it was $16, so thank you, Steve.
Okay, see ya.
All right, that I was already in a bad mood. That just made it a little worse. 800-288-9227. Don't you love that text plan? Can someone from Team Blue call in and defend that text plan? I've been pretty good about getting Democrats to call in, or people who are Democrat leaning to call in. I would love to hear from one of you right now. Call in, defend that plan. Tell me why that's good for America. Tell me how that would make America better. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I don't foresee anybody taking the Pepsi challenge on this one, though, Garrett. But if anyone else wants to call in, your thoughts, 800-288-9227. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. The DNC concludes tonight, Democrat National Convention. Your keynote speaker is the presidential nominee for the Democrats, current Vice President Kamala Harris. She's going to go out there. She's going to read off a teleprompter for a while and not take any questions. And earlier in the show, I was playing you Trump taking questions. He is taking more questions from the press during today's James Show than she has the entire campaign. You would think that would be an issue. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. JD and Prosper, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think, JD?
You know what I think? I'm getting kind of, just frustrated with these points, and I wanted to finally call in and kind of talk about them. Leaning Republican, I really don't care if Kamala Harris speaks to the media, because the truth of the matter is, if you're Republican, you're not going to vote for her anyways, no matter what she says. If you're Democrat, you are, even if she says nothing. And if she's an independent, that could sway somebody either way. And if she stays silent, they won't know what she says, and she might vote for Trump. So what's the big deal if you're a Republican? Why even worry about it? It doesn't matter, okay? Since I do lean Republican, I would kind of want to know what kind of Trump likes to think about things. But he really doesn't say much either. He talks a lot, but there's no policy coming out of him either. I've been to a Trump rally. It's 2 hours of nonsense, rambling on about nothing. So you really don't get anything from him either. And that's just how it is. You don't get anything from any candidate. Usually it's all crap anyways. My second point is, it frustrates me to hear from the Republican, media, talking heads, pundits, whatever, that Kamala Harris has just stolen this nomination, whatever. We were told by Republican media, right-leaning media, I was told by my conservative friends, a vote for Biden would be a vote for Kamala Harris. So Biden voters knew what they were voting for anyways. So it doesn't matter. She was going to be the nominee regardless. And even if they elected Joe Biden, most Democrats would be totally thrilled with Kamala Harris. So it doesn't matter. These things that people are arguing about and getting all crazy about is just really frustrating. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
You're just annoyed with the whole process, aren't you? Well, look,
you know what? I'm annoyed that you don't get really policy out of any candidate, out of any party.
But you understand why they do that, right? I mean, if she really rolled out her policy stances, she might lose more voters than she wins. Now, they do talk about policy in the areas where it helps them. So Trump did, like today when we were playing his audio, he talked a little policy. He talked about shutting down the border. How is
he going? That's just how he says, I would end the war in Ukraine with a phone call, and that's it. I'll just end it. Well, no, come on. Give me some more details. How are you going to end it?
But we know he would do the Remain in Mexico policy. He would turn around the asylum claims, and we know what he would do because he already did it. Granted, he didn't go into specifics in that speech, but the Democrats are pretty good about policy when it's something that is in their priority list. They will talk all day about abortions. JD, they will tell you all about how much they love bodily autonomy when it comes to abortions. The freedom is their most important thing when it comes to abortions. Not so much about straws, but more importantly, can you end a pregnancy? So look, you're being a little extreme, which just lets me know that you're frustrated in the fact that they never say policy. No, they rarely give out policy details. They do say some here and there. But I do agree with some of your stance in the fact that, complaining about how Kamala doesn't come talk to the press. You're right. That's not really going to win anyone over or lose any votes for her. But it is a criticism directed at the people who are saying we got to save democracy and talking about how important every vote matters. It's just pointing out the hypocrisy of the Democrat Party. And while you're not going to change anyone's mind, that could be effective in dampening enthusiasm. So people who would otherwise vote for the Democrats on November 5th, if they're not enthusiastic about it, maybe they'll forget, maybe they won't schedule the time, maybe they'll go on like a Bumble date, or what's it called? Bumble date? I don't know. I have
Mumble. What I don't do the social media dating though. But usually people in the general election don't usually miss. You might miss your county elections or state elections though. But I think everybody's going to turn out. Because when general rolls around, everybody's accounted for that really wants to make their vote.
Well, here's the deal. So, look. No one's complaining on the left that Donald Trump goes out and speaks to the media too much. I think Republicans really want Kamala Harris to go out and talk to the media because they think ultimately it would hurt her. That's why. Yeah,
exactly. Well, exactly. Trump wants a camera in front of his face all the time, and most of it is just a bunch of rambling nonsense. I agree with most of his policies because I don't think he really knows too much policy, but I just know the people that he would have in place would be the people, intimate in the policies.
All right.
I feel okay with that.
Thank you, JD and Prosper. I appreciate you calling in the show and sharing your situation, bud. 800-288-9227 if you want to jump in the conversation. We're going to talk with Debbie Schlussel coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. All right, I thought we would spend the majority of today's show talking about the Democrat National Convention, but we had breaking news that happened right as the show started. There's a manhunt underway in Arizona, an actionable assassination threat against Trump. No one took a shot this time yet, but there's a guy that cops are looking for, 66-year-old weirdo that has a couple warrants out in a couple different states, also needs to be registered whenever he gets a new address. And then Donald Trump spoke. Donald Trump had like an hour of just talking and then answering questions from the media. On top of that, we also had breaking news during the show. Kamala Harris released some more of her policy platforms. Now, there's no audio. It's just text. Steve Moore was going over that, the former Trump economic advisor, with you. So, I mean, we've been easily sidetracked. So much going on. My next guest probably has a very strong opinion on all three of these topics. Debbie Schlussel's back on The James Show. And I want you to take the same ruthless approach that we're used to and just break down the news of the day. Which of these stories do you think is most important? The DNC, the assassination threat, or the actual policy preferences of Kamala Harris?
I mean, I think the assassination attempt, because to me, all we hear about is the hate speech on the right, the alleged hate speech. The real hate speech is on the left, and that's why people are deranged to do these kinds of things. Yes, there have been attempts on both sides, but there have been a lot from the left to Trump. I mean, there was the assassination attempt previously that missed him by just an inch. And thank God he turned his head the right way. There's this, and there have been others. And it should be a major story, but it really isn't, because the media is just focusing on coronating Kamala.
Well, not to make you angry here, Debbie. I know you're probably having a pretty good day, and I don't want to ruin it. But I have two TVs on in my studio. The left one's on Fox News. The right one is on MSNBC. I guess that's kind of ironic. MSNBC hasn't even mentioned the assassination threat against Trump. They didn't cut to him doing the press conference. They didn't cut to him answering questions. And by cut to him, I don't mean take it. I mean just like have it set in a side screen while they talked over it or something. They haven't even announced that this has even happened, Debbie.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. When there was the other assassination attempt, I'm sure it's not the first one, but the first almost successful one, or where it was like everyone knew about it, it was on the news. The one back, how long ago has it been? Like a month? 2 months? I can't remember.
A month and a week.
A month and a week. Okay, so much has happened since then. Mm-hmm. But when that happened, one of my friends used to be a DJ and a radio host in Detroit. And he said that he was listening to different radio stations around the country online to see if what they would say about the assassination attempt, or even if they would talk about it. And a lot of them didn't even mention it. They mentioned the weather over the weekend. They mentioned the deaths of, weren't there people that died that same weekend? Like, I think Shannon Doherty and Richard Simmons and Dr. Ruth. They didn't even mention it. It's kind of like they're trying to cover up what's actually happening in the news. And I remember back in the day when even CNN, the Clinton News Network, they at least would tell you what's going on. I mean, they would give their spin and they would lie to you about stuff, but they would at least mention the event. This is a major event, and they don't even mention it because they don't want you to know. If it were in the reverse against Biden or Kamala, it would be all over their airwaves.
But they've even said it out loud. You don't want to humanize the guy. If you have him on your show, or if you talk about him, or if you interview him, you're going to humanize him. And they're so concerned about this guy being treated as a human being instead of some disparate other.
Right. I don't want to humanize anybody. I want the news to be covered, and that's it. There shouldn't be a spin on any network, but the reason why there are ideological networks are in reaction to the fact that we used to have only a few mainstream news TV channels, and their news programs were all dominated by far-left propaganda, and they would lie about news stories, and they would select what they would show about those news stories and so on. And that's why Fox News came about, and that's why MSNBC came about, I think, in response, or an attempted response. And plus Fox News was in response to CNN. So, I mean, I don't think anybody should be humanized. Just cover the news. Yes, they are humans. They should be treated, like anybody else. But nobody should be humanized. But they also shouldn't be trying to demonize. And that's what they're trying to do when they say we don't want to humanize. What they really are saying is we want to demonize him. Yeah, you're going to ruin all this good demonizing work we've done. You're going to undo it all if people hear him in his own words in a comfortable setting, being a regular person. They may not think he's Hitler anymore. Right, exactly. All right, can I play you a soundbite and get your reaction to it? Absolutely. Well, don't be so happy. Your head might explode. This is Oprah last night at the DNC. I just cut out this little part just for you, Debbie. You're going to love this. Mm-hmm.
I've seen racism and sexism and income inequality and division. I've not only seen it, at times I've been on the receiving end of it. I've seen... Yeah, the poor victim, poor victim, Oprah. She's worth $3 billion. Oh, yeah. Please lecture me about income inequality and discrimination, billionaire. I wish... I would be, I've been a victim of anti-Semitism. Where's my mansion in Montecito? Where is my talk show? I mean, a lot of channels when her crappy talk show first came out replaced Phil Donahue, who died recently. And I was no fan of his either. I think he helped ruin America. But she helped ruin it even more with her show, which defined deviancy down even more. And she got away with it because she was a black chick. I mean, let's be honest. She was the biggest beneficiary of affirmative action in American history, her and the Obamas, or at least Barack Obama. And so for her to whine like that is absurd. And if you watched her show, she actually did a lot of racist things against black Americans. She did a lot of shows about black men in various things. I don't even want to spread her propaganda, but she did a lot of anti-black male shows because she is, above all, a feminist, and her audience, and she knew this, was white suburban women in America, and she wanted to appeal to them. So she is a racist, and please, she's a billionaire. Everything she touches is gold because she is a black female. And that's the only reason. Nobody else could do that with Weight Watchers. And by the way, I mean, I think you introduced her the wrong way. Isn't she Ozempic Oprah?
Oh, I don't know about her current weight loss regimen. But she does own 40% of Weight Watchers, though, doesn't she?
She did, and this is the thing. So she lost
sold out?
A lot of weight, and she lied. She lied and said she did it through exercise, but everyone called her out because everyone knew. You could tell. You don't get that thin that fast, and Oprah was never that thin. And she finally was forced to admit that she was on these chemicals, on Ozempic or one of them, Wegovy, one of them.
All right.
And so she ended up selling all of her interest in Weight Watchers and giving the profits, I think, to HBCUs in a foundation, historical Black colleges and universities. She then did a special on ABC about weight loss using Ozempic and how it's not so bad and it's actually the right way to do things, you know.
Well, look,
she came over under so much fire.
Sure. It's good to see her finally making some money, though. Debbie, how can they find you outside of the James Show on WBAP?
At Debbie Schlussel on Twitter, at Real Debbie Schlussel on Instagram, Debbie S fan page on Facebook.
All right, thank you very much. There she is, Debbie Schlussel. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you about the Arlington Uber driver that was forced to drive to Florida at gunpoint, and he probably didn't even get a tip. That's coming up on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.